beautiful souls. This is Quinn Curtis, and you are listening to Joyful Living. And I am overjoyed to be connecting with you today and spending a little bit of time with you in the joy conversation. I think that this conversation about living joyfully every day, not just once you've finally arrived or when you finally have that thing that you're wanting or going after, or when your life circumstances finally change. I think this is such a crucial conversation, and I'm so grateful for all of you who are listening. This gives me so much hope that together, as we are able to really lean into our joy more and cheer each other on in living joyfully as well, that it's going to make a big difference in our capacity to bring greater love and healing and wholeness to the planet. I just posted the other day this quote by Debbie Ford that I absolutely love, that I wanted to mention here and wanted to kind of guide our conversation from this place. Debbie says, "There is nothing more beautiful than a warrior woman standing in her power, courage, and confidence. From this place of strength, she is capable of loving the world in a way that transforms pain into promise and hell into heaven." So powerful. I'll read it again, actually, because I want it to really sink in. "There is nothing more beautiful than a warrior woman standing in her power, courage, and confidence. From this place of strength, she is capable of loving the world in a way that transforms pain into promise and hell into heaven." This is the goal of joyful living. When we live joyfully, or the intention of living joyfully, when you live in your joy, it returns you to your power, courage, and confidence. This is why I feel like focusing on joy is such a powerful gateway, because if we just focus there, then it can open up the rest of the pieces so powerfully. And so it's an interesting conversation that we're having, because what is often taught in our society is to seek and pursue happiness, right? And so, which I feel like is very different from joy, because happiness can be built on external circumstances. And I mean, here again, it's kind of semantics, right? So happiness might not mean this to you, but just looking at kind of like a surface level thing, it does feel like there's a lot of aspects in our society that are really promoting, like we just look at the magazine stand, right? And it's like these top tricks to keep your man happy in bed, or like these 6 tricks to look younger and feel beautiful, right? Or look and feel sexy, right? So there's all of these messages in the media, or even just watching commercials or movies or anything like that really affects and inundates our culture. And all of them are pointing to happiness being something outside of you, and that if you don't have it yet, then you are, there's a problem, right? There's something that isn't quite right. And so even just looking at this aspect of finding happiness in the body, I think is so profound. Yeah, I mean, the contrast there, right? Of finding happiness in the body versus finding joy in the body. It's like, if I lose 20 pounds, then I'll finally be happy with my body. If I, or if I'm finally successful financially, I'll finally be happy with my life. Or when I finally have the life partner, spouse that treats me how I want to be treated, then I'll finally be happy, right? And so really what we're talking about with joyful living is something so much deeper. It's not a surface happiness at all, and it's not something that comes from outside of us. It's about tapping into that inner well and reservoir of joy that is who you are. That is really your light, letting your light shine. And I was contemplating this past week, actually, and really looking at that scripture in particular actually was just really singing to me as I was pondering the concept of living joyfully. I want to just pull it up really quick. Give me 2 little seconds. I wasn't planning on sharing it, but it does feel like it would serve here. So let me just pull that up, because it's so powerful. And I know it's one that you all know. Okay, so here it is. It's Matthew 5:14. in the Bible. It says, "Ye are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. Neither do men light a candle and put it under a bushel, but on a candlestick, and it giveth light unto all those that are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father which is in heaven." So the parts of that I really, really love is just this concept of being the light, that you are the light of the world, right? That's just who we are. We are light. That's who our divine, natural, true self is. And then that, that we're being guided, we're being counseled to not light our candle, to have our light shining and then hide it under a bushel, but instead to put that light on a candlestick so it can light up the whole house. And so I love this concept so much, because I feel like this is really what we're getting at with joyful living. When we're looking at this process of living more joyfully and connecting into that joy and letting that joy in our light shine out, then really what we're seeing is that our light is able to shine out. And when our light is able to shine out, then it transforms all the situations in our life. And so what I've really been thinking a lot about lately is the concept that Marianne Williamson shared that she learned from a Course in Miracles. And she says, "A miracle is a shift in perception from fear to love, from a belief in what is not real to faith in that which is. That shift in perception changes everything." And so here again, like letting your light shine would be that shift into love, right? That's the perception of love. That's standing in, like what Debbie was saying, in your power, courage, and confidence. That's divine confidence is what that would be coming from. And all of that power, courage, and confidence, I feel like, especially with the place that Debbie is connecting that to, those are all coming from the heart emotions. So none of that is, forced power or false courage or a show of confidence, right? That's not what she's talking about. And sometimes we may feel like that's what's being asked of us, but really just returning back to love, returning back to the light that we actually always are and always have been, returning back to love, who we are. And no matter what God that you believe in or type of divine that you believe in the end, any God, any deity, the divine is love. And so I even love asking that question. If you're somebody who believes in Jesus and loves Jesus, which is amazing as well, then there's a phrase that goes around that says, "What would Jesus do?" And so I've found in my world that's a little bit tricky to navigate, because sometimes we're like, well, what would Jesus do? And then we go think through his life and we're like, okay, well, and regardless what your religious belief is, to recognize Jesus as a spiritual teacher, there's so much to learn from all of our spiritual teachers. So looking at like Jesus' life and what would he do, then that could take us to a place where we're like, well, he was with the lepers, and he, blessed the people that cursed him, and he, he served and he loved and he did all these things, right? And that might inform us a little bit, right? But sometimes it's tricky to have that translation come over. And I've even had people in my world who are like, I'm going to be like Jesus. And Jesus, they quote some parts in the Bible that are like, I can't remember the exact quotation, but it's something like that I came with a sword, like that Jesus came with a sword. And so they feel like that gives, they're trying to be like Jesus. And so they're going to be really like cutting or have a sword for anything that they feel like is not true in their world. And so if a family member says something that they feel like is, not in alignment, they're going to cut it down. And if a person is in their life that they are, that is not in alignment with God or with God's chosen path, then they're going to cut that person out, and they feel completely justified in doing that. And so what we see is actually that in all religious thought, that there is this common theme of love, of wholeness, of peace, of of doing good, really, right? I mean, that's underneath all of the religious teachings. But then on the surface, we see what some would call spiritual ego, which is the truth that religion has actually been the heart of much of the war and suffering and pain, genocides caused upon people, all in the history of our planet. And so so we have a very big contrast here. So what I feel like is happening is that we can miss the mark, right? And so what I feel like is a much stronger question than just what would Jesus do to help inform our actions is actually what would love do? Because if you believe that the divine is love, then it in turn, in connecting to that divine, in connecting to the divine within you, it's reconnecting you to that love space within you. It's reconnecting you to the love that is in the universe. And suddenly you have a shift in your perception that opens you up to miracles. Because it's really difficult to maintain a healthy perception where we can offer love when fear is the motivator behind it. And honestly, this has been a major path of mine over the past couple years, actually, as I just decided at one point that I no longer wanted to listen to fear. I didn't want fear to be the motivator anymore. And so I really looked at all the places where fear was motivating me. So everything that I was doing in my life, I started asking really powerful questions like, well, why am I doing this? And I got really real and deep and very authentic with myself, like raw and authentic with myself. Because on the surface, like things like, well, why am I doing motherhood? Right? Could look like, well, it's because it's divine and it's what I should be doing, and I love my kids and it's great. But then when I looked at, well, why am I really doing it though? Like, what's behind this? What is at the heart of this? Then I did see that there were a couple of places where some fear had come in and was motivating me. So there was some fear about like, I'm doing motherhood, I'm taking care of my kids good so that they don't, because I'm afraid of them hating me, or I'm afraid of messing up their life, or I'm afraid of losing them even was one of the fears. And so by seeing that, then that opened up the space for a shift in perception, right? And granted, these are all unconscious, subconscious places. So this wasn't like, I had to really dig deep and really ask myself, no, why, Quinn? Why are you doing this? No, why? What's behind this? To really get to the heart of it. And what you find is each time that you shift from being motivated by fear, even if it's like one little fear, and you shift it into love, the shift into love is ultimately a shift into choice. It's putting you back in choice. And so how that shifted for me is that instead of like, I do motherhood because I have to, because I have these kids and I have this obligation and I want to do it right and I don't want to lose them and I don't want them to hate me. I don't want to have to pay for therapy when I'm older, kind of like crazy thoughts that we all have and joke about, right? Instead of shifting now to a place where I am truly at a place of massive peace and have even greater joy. And I had joy with my family, before looking at this, so that wasn't the issue, but I still had days where it was drudgery, or where I was resentful for my family, or I was feeling like they were holding me back, or I was feeling like I would be so much more free if I didn't have to take care of them. So, just diving deeper and looking at, well, what's behind that? Why am I really doing this? Why is that feeling that way? Now I'm in a space of total choice, which then opens me up completely to love. So now with each of my kids, then it's a space of, oh my gosh, I choose to be with you. I choose to spend my life with you. I choose to take care of you. I choose to enjoy you. I choose to enjoy our time together. I choose to create a happy life with you. And each one of them choosing, I choose you. I choose to be with you. Because so often when we look into the what's behind, what's motivating us, And especially if there's any like heavy feelings or stickiness about like, oh, I don't really want to be doing this, or this is just so dang hard and I just can't find an easier way to do it, then we'll find that it's so hard because there's a lot of fear behind it, motivating it. There's a lot of like heaviness that is, weighing us down in those certain places in our life. And so it just changes everything. So I'm just seeing how, in my life, in my work, like shifting the perceptions from fear to love, like Marianne Williamson was talking about, that really is the key to joyful living. It's the key to living a meaningful life. And so it's been a fascinating endeavor to really shift into love, right? And it's interesting too, as we look at like fear to love, you wouldn't necessarily think that those are opposite, right? Or that would be what the shift would be. I know that in a lot of the, themes that I've heard over the years, that quote would be like, shifting from fear to faith, right? And so even faith can be a little bit trickier of a concept for us to really ground into. It's so important and crucial, but I feel like love is the anchor. Like if you had to choose just one thing to anchor yourself to, one type of divine to be connected to and resourced by and led by, it would be love, right? And then whatever the face of that looks like can be unique to you. But at the heart of it, if we are all connecting even deeper into love, that opens the space for miracles, and it opens up the space for us to, like Marianne or Debbie said in her quote, that from this place of strength, from this place of deep love, like we're talking about, which of course is just filled with joy, she or we are capable of loving the world in a way that transforms pain into promise and hell into heaven. And as I look around at our world and our family circumstances, our financial circumstances, the things in our body, right? Can you imagine like the capacity to love, bring like so much love into your world, into your life, into your family, into your body, that it actually transforms pain into promise? Transforms pain into promise and transforms hell into heaven. I can't even imagine more of a inspired, beautiful way to partner with and be with the divine than those things. I feel like this is what our hearts are yearning for, right? This deepness of love. And so really the key though is to be able to shift our perceptions from fear to love. And so one of the most powerful ways that I've found to also shift those perceptions is there's actually two things. So the first one is to recognize the power of projections. Projections are so fascinating, but basically the concept of projections is that anything that really everybody in the world is really a mirror to us. And so anything that we are bothered by in another person, it's mirroring back something that is needing to be healed or let go of within ourself. It's not necessarily ever about the actual person. And of course, there are situations where you could argue that it's absolutely about the other person. And I would agree. But I love this thought, this to just bring it all home. Marianne says, the way of the miracle worker. So this would be, this courageous warrior woman who is capable of loving the world in a way that transforms. The way of this woman is to see all human behavior as one of two things, either love or a call for love. So it's either love or it's a call for love. So even in those situations where we maybe feel wronged or taken advantage of, those would be in the category of a call for love. That's a person who is hungry and starving for love and is making really poor and painful decisions as a result, that can create, it just perpetuates and creates more pain. And so really, by shifting our perceptions, by shifting more into love and recognizing those projections, then it actually it allows us to live more free, because it brings more of our power back to ourselves. So what happens in a projection is that we actually place the power outside of ourselves. So for example, one of the best places where you find projections is with our life partners and spouses. They are, I think because we love them so fiercely, then it opens up this space that we're in a position where they can become our greatest teacher, or really our greatest mirror. And so the way that this shows up for me often is that the projection will come up and I'll be like, my husband, he is so, he's just not inspired, and he's just a mess, and he's just doing all these things, and it drives me nuts, right? And he can't turn off the freaking fan in the bathrooms, and it drives me crazy, right? And so then if we're looking at projections as a way of just recognizing, okay, I've got some major projection, he is really bothering me at this moment. And so if instead I'm able to look at, well, what's actually going on here in this situation, like within me, then I recognize the reason why he's triggering me is because something is off within myself. It actually has very, very, very little to do with his actual actions. It's there is something within me that is outside of love, right? I've shifted from a perception of seeing my world and my life through the lens of love, and I've shifted into fear. So when I'm shifting into fear, then that creates anxiety, and that creates tension, and that creates massive projection where I start blaming the people in my life for my own unhappiness and for my lack of joy. And so really seeing the power in projections, it just helps us return to a space of, oh, wow, like I'm actually at choice here. And, oh, okay, this massive projection that's showing up, my kids driving me nuts, or my husband driving me nuts, let me just get quiet for a minute. Let me step away from the situation and really look within my heart and soul to see what is this showing me about what's going on inside of me. And so there's so much farther that you could go with the conversation of projections. It's definitely something for another time, but it's even just knowing a little bit and just toying with that concept can help point you to greater freedom from that, just the pain of projection. Projection can be very painful, and it also puts us in a very victim consciousness place where our happiness really is dependent on other people and our life circumstances changing. So whenever we're in that space, our hands are tied, right? We can't really do anything to shift out of what we're into greater joy. And instead, we are, we're stuck until something changes. And so, having done this in my life many times and played the blame game and been a victim, and I mean, I still do it to some degree or another. I've just gotten better at catching it faster so that I can shift out of that perception of it's all their fault and, it's not my fault. I'm the victim of this situation. So I can shift out of that scary, fearful perception of like, oh my gosh, they are doing this thing to me. And it's so, and I hate it. And instead shifting into love of, oh, this is triggering me because I'm really tired right now. And I actually haven't been nurturing myself very much. And I don't feel really connected to them right now. So now that I know, more of what the real problem is, then there's an actual possibility for a solution to happen faster. And this is why I think that joyful living is so possible, because we become in a space where we are very easily able to shift our perceptions all throughout the day. So as an example, actually, let me tell you the next point, and then I'll tell you the story. So the next point that I would say in really shifting from fear to love and shifting into greater joy is this concept of changing our stories so that we can change our lives. So this is such a fascinating one to look deeply at, and it's definitely something that we've kind of talked about in one way or another in past episodes as far as we've looked at stories, but really recognizing the truth in this, that changing your story to changing your life is really where it's at. And I even have recognized just barely that that this, I feel like, is a major part of my calling, is to really, of course, in my own life, and also to help those that I'm called to work with, or those of you listening that are, it's in alignment for you to be here and to connect and for us to learn from each other. It feels like this is a major part of my path to help change stories to change lives. And so I love looking at what our stories are. And in fact, I've posted a video on YouTube. I can post the link here in this podcast. Let me make a note. But the video is all about like the 5 steps to using or working with jealousy in order to create what you really desire. So it's just basically showing up that the jealousy is an emotion that shows up, and immediately we can think that that's a negative emotion. But if we use it to actually help us get more clear on like what our heart and soul is actually desiring, jealousy can be a really powerful gateway in. And so I'll post that video. You can look at that deeper, but just one of the parts that I talk about in there is asking yourself, what is your story about why you can't have the thing that you want? So what is your story about why you can't have it? So even if you just took a moment and looked at, what is the number one pain point in your life right now? Maybe it's not enough money. Maybe it's your health. Maybe it's your relationship. Whatever it is, or a job you hate, or, there's so many places that are so many big struggles that are up for a lot of us, right? And so if you were to look at, well, what is it that you really desire in this situation, which is usually like the opposite of it, right? We would really desire to not have this thing happening. Then ask yourself, well, what is my story about why I can't have that now, or why I can't have it at all even? And then we're able to really see just how much that story that we've been telling ourselves is laden with fear, right? It's actually not filled with love. And so, of course, anyway, so yeah, that's a good start to just like look at, well, what's my story? So even if we were to look at, if you're feeling unhappy right now, or feeling like you're just struggling to live joyfully, what is your story that you're telling yourself about your life right now? Because a lot of the times, as we just stop to ask ourselves that, we'll recognize, oh, well, I'm actually telling myself right now, like in my head, or my internal story is that, excuse me, my voice is getting gravelly. We actually find that, oh my gosh, I'm telling myself the story that I'm actually worthless, and I'm not ever going to get what I would desire, and I'm never going to live my life mission, and my dreams are never going to come true. And even my husband and I were talking about this the other day, because he was noticing how so many of his friends that are all in their, early to mid 30s. One more drink, 1 second. There we go. That so many of them are already, even like, I can think of people younger than that even, that are already acting as if they are just old men, and their dreams are already dead and their life is already over. And so the way that they're doing that is they're not taking care of their body. They're not able to be active anymore. They're not doing the things that they love that brings them joy. They're just getting through the day. They're just going through the daily grind. So to me, that is a major symptom of I've given up on my dreams. I don't believe in my desires and my dreams, and that they matter. And I don't see how I can have what I desire. And so I'm just resigning myself to the fact that this is just my life. So I just better get used to it and endure it. And survive it, right? And so that's one way of doing life, and that can work for some people maybe. But what I feel like brings us greatest joy is shifting from survival into more of a thriving mentality, which definitely is the shift from fear to love, right? Survival would be fear, love would be into thriving. And so I love the concept of, changing your story to change your life. Once you actually look at your story, then you can find some holes in it, right? But if we don't stop to notice, well, what am I telling myself about why I can't have this? Then it actually, it keeps haunting us, and that story will keep running our life subconsciously. So really looking at our stories and changing them absolutely can then affect what's happening on the outside of our life, the exterior. So maybe the story, so for example, I've had a lot of stories running right now that I've been looking at that have been really interesting and also some painful ones. And so one of them was that I have a lot of desire right now to just bring my Dharma work into the world, like my life mission, and just speak my truth and do the good that my heart is calling me to do. So I'm feeling that it's time to up level. It's time to shift more fully into that. And so as I'm stepping more fully into all of those pieces, then every single morning this week, I have woken up to the same demons. And in fact, War of Art talks about this dance of facing your demons every day in the ring as you're intending and trying to live out your art and follow your heart and soul. And so here again, this is what's been happening and I've been seeing. And the story it's always a story that shows up with this demons, we'll call it, right? Where I just wake up and I feel like crap. And I feel I'll just give you a picture of what it looks like, okay? And here again, this is subconscious stuff, right? So this is, I know some of you will hear this and you'll write me and you'll be so sweet and say, oh, this isn't true. And of course, I know it's not true, but it still is a story that has run in the background, like a song that we just hear on the radio every once in a while, right? So this is what's been playing for me. So I wake up, I check my clock, and I'm like, ugh, I'm so tired. I wish I didn't have to wake up early. I hate waking up this early. Mornings suck. This is so hard. Then I drag myself out of bed. Well, actually first, before I do that, then I usually am looking for any bit of energy to, energize my system to wake up to. So I'll usually have my phone by my nightstand and I turn it on, flip it open. I open up my email, see if there's good news. I don't know why my subconscious is always drawing me to that, but it's always like, oh my gosh, maybe in my email there's going to be this amazing good news email. So I find when I'm getting into a fearful place, I'm checking my email more, and I've looked at that a lot. Why is that happening? That's so weird. How often does awesome news come through email? Very, very rarely, right? So I open up my email, of course, sift through stuff. Usually there's more, there's something I've got to do. There's a fire to put out. There's something to address. There's something I've forgotten, right? So that doesn't help energize. That only makes it worse. So then I'm like, ugh, I'm already behind and I feel like crap. So then maybe if I have a few more minutes that I can stay in bed, then I flip on Facebook and I'm like, okay, maybe there's good news here. and sometimes there is. I'll be honest. Sometimes there is, but it's pretty rare that even someone just wrote this beautiful message on your wall. Even that, if I'm in that much of a funk, even that feels but they're just one person is kind of the story that goes in my head. I hope you're laughing and can relate, because I feel like I am definitely not alone in this, and that we all have similar ways of operating. So then I finally get myself out of bed, and I know I have a busy day and I've got things on my schedule that are definitely Dharma things that are, my heart and soul, my passions, and all these exciting appointments and doing the work that I love. But I walk into the bathroom, look at myself in the mirror, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're a freaking train wreck. Like, you look so bad and you're so frumpy. And what business do you have telling anybody or coaching anybody or working with anybody? I mean, look at you. You've already failed this morning just by waking up and looking in the mirror, right? And so I've even I'm getting really authentic. So then even lately, I've been needing to get on makeup and get ready earlier. And so I'm like putting on my makeup, and the whole time there's this story going on in my head of like, oh my gosh, why are you even putting on makeup? Why do you even try? Like, have you seen yourself? And then the makeup gets done, and then the thought comes of like, seriously? Is that as good as it's going to get? Like, seriously, look at yourself. Which, okay, sounds completely horrible, right? But I would love to bet you money if you've ever not had thoughts like that, right? And so I'm finding as I'm shifting into greater light, then greater evidence of my shadow is coming forward to look at and to let go of and to shift. And so what I've been doing is I've seen this as a call to shift into greater love, to have greater compassion on myself, and also to use my skill sets to be able to say, oh, I hear this story that's happening, and instead of letting it spiral me down, I'm going to be at choice here. I'm not going to operate in fear of, oh my gosh, what if this is all really true? And then that makes me spiral down, and then I don't end up doing the work that my heart and soul is calling for me to do that day. So instead, I'm looking at like, oh my gosh, okay, what do I need? So sometimes I'll turn on a song that's like upbeat and helps me raise my energy. I'll use some essential oils to help support my emotional health. And if you're curious about that, you can head to my website, and I have under Work With Me, there's a Joyful Health section, and it has some classes, and one of them that there's a recording of is on emotional health. So definitely check that out if that's something that you're curious about, using those tools. I'm all for using holistic support like herbs and vitamins and omegas and iron and all these good things for our body and essential oils to really energize and support the good that we're here to do in our days and in the world. So I might be doing that, or I might put some oils in my diffuser. And then I might turn on, I have my audio that I tell myself, like tell myself the truth, which I should probably talk about later on a different call, or you can message me and I can, I'll just say it's just an audio of me saying some affirmations and some positive outcomes that I'm working on, so that I'm staying really connected into that story versus the old story of, like you're worthless and this probably isn't going anywhere and why are you even trying, and have you looked at yourself, all that crappy stuff, right? And so what I'm wanting to just propose to you is that the issue is not in having those stories show up. The issue is not in having those feelings show up. It's not in, you're not less of a person because that exists, and recognizing everyone has that. And the difference between those who create from their heart and soul and live joyfully and those who don't is the story that they are willing to listen to. I loved, so much Marianne Williamson today, but there was another quote that I was just reading in her book, The Law of Divine Compensation, which is phenomenal. I was just revisiting it again, and she said that we are always putting our faith in something. So we're either putting our faith in love or we're putting our faith in struggle. So that would be with our faith in fear, right? So in looking at changing our story, it's about putting our faith in love for ourselves, compassion, love for our work in the world, love for those in our life, and instead of putting our faith in struggle. And so my hope is that these thoughts will help just to trigger you looking at those shadowy places within and just saying, where is fear still motivating me? And where am I still seeing my life and my situation through the lens of fear? And how can I shift into greater love? And as you do so, it will open up the miracles. It will open up greater joy in your life. And what we're talking about with that is daily joy. So to just truly live a day that is rich with joy throughout, and that doesn't always mean that it's easy. That doesn't mean that it's free from struggle, but it means that even in the hard times, there is joy. Even in the pain and the sorrow, the grief, there is joy. Because really what we're talking about with joy is we're talking about meaning. Man is searching for meaning, right? That's our great quest, is to find meaning in our life. We're hungry for it. We're starving for it. And so as we return to love, it opens up a space for meaning. It gives meaning to the suffering. It gives meaning to the struggle. And it gives meaning to joy and to living beautifully and brilliantly. And it gives meaning to coming alive and letting that light shine and letting go of the bushel that we've been hiding under, and instead putting that light in a candlestick so that it lights up our whole house and our communities and our world. So this is my hope and my prayer for you and for all of us, that we can step into a greater place of letting our light shine, returning to love, letting go of fear, and shifting those perceptions to open up to greater miracles and greater daily joy. So much love to you. We'll talk to you soon. Bye. And in the end, only love will last. You've been listening to Joyful Living. If you haven't already done so, be sure to email me at quinn@joyfullivingmovement.com so I can send you our yummy Joyful Living welcome package filled with lots of awesomeness, including access to our private Joyful Living network. I read every email from my listeners and would love to hear from you. Also, be sure to leave a review on iTunes, and most importantly, have a joy-filled day.